Namaste, good morning. I'm grateful to the management of SGT University, particularly Dr. Musanna, Dr. Sinha, other dignitaries, the deans, the pro-vice chancellors and the chancellor, and my dear students. Now, it is indeed a test for me today because I have come unprepared. I thought that I was coming for a scholarship distribution event, and Dr. Musanna, as my good friend, puts me on the spot. And he has also told me that I have between 15 to 20 minutes to speak. So not only do you expect me to motivate you, but in line with the trends in the country, you expect me to do magic within next 15 to 20 minutes. Such is the state of affair that we're all confining ourselves to voluntary imbecility. On this era of information, I'm really concerned about information and the volume of information, the flow of information that all of us, and particularly the young minds, experience. In the process, we are really deprecating, we're really reducing the true knowledge. And I will illustrate that with an example, number of examples as a matter of fact. You see, let us take an instance. I will ask you a question, and I'm assuming that all of you have read history. Yes, everybody have read history here, students? Something in 9th, 10th. Now, I've asked this question a number of times to people: who won the Second World War? So, US, how many of you think it was United States? Show of hands. Higher. How many of you think it was UK, England? How many of you think it was Japan? India? I was waiting for that. Everybody laughed. Which country lost maximum number of people in the Second World War? Japan. Oh, great, Japan. Why Japan? Hiroshima and Nagasaki. This is my demonstrable example of the power of spurious information from multiple sources. China lost maximum number of people during the Second World War. Which is the country after China? India lost maximum number of people in the Second World War, number 2. After that is Russia, and then others. Who decided that maximum number of people, Japan or US won the Second World War, or the UK won the Second World War, or the best movie is Avatar? Who decided that? I think today we're facing a challenge in terms of discerning between information and fact. It's a challenge, and I'll come to that later, what can be done about it. Today, your source of information are following. The sources of information today for the youth today is internet. And on the internet, the first biggest source is Google. Research studies have demonstrated that Google continues to be the number 1 source for searching. Now, Google is a for-profit company. You must understand that. It's not a not-for-profit. It's not in the business of egalitarianism and educating you. It's there to disseminate information, what is available. And it can structure information to allow you to think that it is a fact. Which means all that information is available to you in the first page, or at best the first 3 pages, to allow you to form an opinion, a belief. This is a big challenge for all of you. The second source of information is Wikipedia. Every second person, we just did a study, very recent study. This was done just 3 months ago. I am Rohtak engaged in that study. When you are talking about context, subject, individuals, countries, entities, more than, and I'm talking IIM students, more than 88% of the students used Wikipedia as a source of information. Now, Wikipedia is user-generated, is editable. Anybody can put anything there. Now, this is a very perilous situation. What could be the other sources of information? The other sources of information after internet could be television, movies. Who dominates the movies? When was the last time you saw a Polish film or a French movie or a German movie? Who dominates third after the films? Books. When was the last time you read a Russian book? Many years ago, in Indian context, we used to have a lot of Russian literature. Sputnik used to be a very popular magazine. Misha for children used to be a very, very popular Culture and Life. These were popular, popular books which were available, no longer. When was the last time somebody read something from Indonesia, from Middle East? So 3 sources are gone. Which is the 4th source of information? Newspaper. Newspaper is a 3rd source of information. Now, again, if we come to newspapers, I will have a separate subject for newspapers. For people who have dealt with newspapers, newspapers are largely predefined because, again, it's a business. Nearly 50% of the newspaper is preset. You're only filling in the blanks. And it's so funny that everything that happens in the world fits the size of the newspaper day in, day out. It's ridiculous, isn't it? Everything that happens in the world, every day fits the size of the newspaper. You're prioritizing. Which is the other source? Maybe video games, maybe songs. Now, who dominates the songs? I mean, most of you would be either listening to Bollywood songs or maybe some regional songs or mostly English songs, North America. Now, what has happened over a period of time because of the domination of particular side of a particular, I would say, particular type of information, your viewpoint is now lopsided. The information available to you is lopsided. Everything that you choose, which is the best movie, already said, Avatar, who decided that? Maybe IMDb, right? Some rating. Who creates those ratings? Which is the best car? JD Powers, they will decide which is the best car. Which is the best laptop? Which is the best designer? Who is the number 1 author? I think we've missed the boat as a nation because we are no longer in the business of providing what is right for you. Somebody else decides what is right for you. Now you have to know who is that somebody. As a matter of fact, because we have already confined ourselves to voluntary imbecility, you don't even know what to wear. You are told at the beginning of the year what to wear. Whether the pinstripe shirts are in, broad stripes are out, pastels are in, dark colors are out, thin tie, broad tie. You have confined yourself to so much of voluntary imbecility, you don't even know which way to part your hair. Because that too is told to you in the beginning of the year. That you know what? Center parting is in. Long hair are in. Mohawk is in. Cut them short. Cut them long. Why is this happening? This is happening because you've stopped thinking. Thinking is incredibly important. And I'm telling you, this is a big concern. It is the lack of that focus because there is no thinking. Second, recent study, again, across a few IIMs, because we have access, so we thought let's just focus ourselves to IIMs. I hope it can be representative of the other places. How many people actually check out the book? How many people read? Nobody wants to read anymore. Nobody's interested, because if you're not reading, you can't think. The foundation of science is imagination. I have doctors here, so doctors can tell me better. Science comes from imagination. Imagination then results in something qualitative. You have a conceptual model from imagination. You observe a phenomena, you think, you ponder, you come with a conceptual model. The conceptual model is then, you create a empirical model, you test it with data, and you try and support or not support the hypothesis which you have promulgated. That's how research is done. But without imagination, research has no meaning. So think about this. When people don't read, that's a second. So first is, your phones are confining you. Second, no reading. When you read, you develop imagination. Because when you're reading a sentence, the sentence has got words. Each word has a meaning, and the meaning is within a context. Each word can have multiple meanings within a context of that line and in that paragraph. When you read a book, you become a serial interpreter. You interpret so quickly, so powerfully, that it really sharpens your imagination. Your imagination, your thinking process. That's why reading is so important. You have to, when you're reading, you go quickly, so quickly. It allows you to interpret things. But when you don't read, what will happen? The imagination will shrink. And with imagination shrinking, the scientific quests will reduce. That's why we produce more junk in research than actual discoveries. We're not thinking anymore. Largely, we end up producing so much junk in research. I'm a contributor to that. I myself produce a lot of junk. It's acceptable in top journals. It's all right. But the point is that we are no longer interpreting, no longer imagining. Now, where does this lead us? What do we do with it? What do we do? I believe that formation of a perspective is extremely important. So when you go out, you must have a perspective. How do you develop a perspective? The perspective can only come if you have taken a considered view of both for and against. If you have had a broad spectrum of reading, if you have had a broad spectrum of experience, and therefore I encourage the faculty to not give information in classes, but to take a position. No longer information is important. I think you're supposed to take a position. And the students should then ask you questions on your position. And you, as the professor, should be able to defend your position. Using data, using theory, it is important that you take a position. This taking a position is an onerous exercise. So I think, first of all, to take a position, the faculty themselves will have to dedicate tremendous amount of resources. So I speak in the IIM system, and we teach, when we go through the case method, it's a case. You have to prepare a case, you have to read the case, and then you have to take a position in the case. Now, students will question you on that position. It's a good method of delivery of some education. Second, the students themselves must read. And third, I believe the smartphones could be let off for a certain period of time during the day. This will allow you to think, and when you think, you might come up with something which you may not have thought of before. Today, when forming perspectives, the information available to you is voluminous, sometimes spurious, sometimes it's not information at all. It's just there. So, ladies and gentlemen, my third request to you, the two I have given, the third one is that interpretation of statistics is very important. How do you interpret? And that interpretation can only take place, again, if you have understood the context within which they are presented. No numbers, I mean, have we really progressed or not progressed? There is something called Red Queen hypothesis. I'm sure many of you would be familiar. It comes from the book many of you would have read called Alice in Wonderland. Anybody who's read Alice in Wonderland? Alice in Wonderland has a queen, and she's the Red Queen. You're familiar with that? It comes from that. The idea comes from that. What happens is that the Red Queen and Alice run, and they run really fast, and when they stop, they're at the same place. So the saying in that book is that you have to, in this world, you have to run as fast as you can to stay at the same place. Have we really made progress? I do not know. Have US and Russia made progress? Because they're supposed to be the two poles. If you view it from the Red Queen hypothesis perspective, they have all developed, space technologies, weapons of mass destruction. But what is the net advantage that each one of them has over the other? I think the advantage is same if they were fighting with sticks. Both have progressed. This is called Red Queen hypothesis. So you need to avoid the Red Queen hypothesis, which means interpretation of statistics is extremely important. Have you made progress? I don't know. I have no understanding whether we have or not. So therefore, I really request you to take a considered view. And as you go forward, I don't know whether I have succeeded in my 16, 17 minutes to motivate you, but I am sure that I have pointed out a few things for you to consider, and I don't know if you're sufficiently motivated to do those, but I can tell you that the information being fed to you today is perilous, and it only creates confusion. So therefore, first thing first is start taking stock of situation and taking a position. A perspective needs to be gained, and that can be gained by a considered view. Second is that you must somehow find yourself a way to focus, read, imagine things, stay away from the smartphone. And lastly, I summarize by saying, please interpret statistics. Find a way and don't fall into the trap of the Red Queen hypothesis. I'm very grateful to you for giving me this opportunity to speak to you. I don't know whether I have succeeded in motivating you, but I can see that I have covered my time. And professors are supposed to pontificate. That's the best thing about professors. You stand there and pontificate, you take it or leave it. It's the gospel truth. Thank you, and Jai Hind.